And good day, everybody. This is Marcel Portut, and welcome to another edition of the Sports Inquirer Show. Hope everyone's having a good day out there. We're recording this on July 16th, 2019. About a week since our last show, the longest gap we've had since we revived it in the summer, so apologies for that. But we have a full show for you, a lot of jam-packed items to talk about. We're going to break down the Atlanta United squad and their recent week of action in the Offside Trap. And we're going to break down the latest NBA moves in the Stagger Screen, the transactions, the big Russell Westbrook trade. We'll break that down for you. And then finally, in the miscellaneous department, we will recap the Wimbledon competition from the past 2 weeks with the wins by Halep on the women's singles competition and the brilliant and excellent Roger Federer and Novak Djokovic final on the men's side that took place a few days ago. If you're following our Twitter, we were live tweeting it, and I'll tell you about how I was in the gym and watching the match and how I was not the only one watching the match while in the gym. It captivated the entire group of people just lifting weights and running on the treadmill and everything like that. So interesting story about that. But as always, if you want to follow everything that we're doing, go to the mothership, to sportsinquirer.net. We have a lot of Atlanta United content up there, from presses and interviews from Justin Miram and Frank de Boer and Pity Martinez. There was thank you for going to the site. That got a lot of attention as far as the Pity Martinez and Frank de Boer. I don't want to call it a squabble. We'll break it down more on the Offside Trap, but putting those pressers up and getting the direct reactions from those guys about Pity's interview with the Argentinian outlet, we got a lot of activity on the site for that. So that was really cool. Really appreciate that. And it showed the intentions of the site, where we provide analysis and we provide review of what's going on. But also, and I always say I want to model this. There are several models, but in this case, it's not like C-SPAN. That's why I put all of the pressers, interviews up there, raw, uncut, and their completion. Because I think you get a lot of sound bites in the sports media, which is good. And for where there's TV, radio, podcasting, and every other outlet that you see. And that's a good way to make things concise and to the point. And we use them in our shows as well. But I like the long form also. That's why I play a lot of our audio quotations will be a minute or 2 minutes long, because I want you to get the full view of what the coach or the athlete or administrator, whatever they're saying. So that's why I think having that full video up was very good, because you got more than just 20 seconds of Pity saying that, oh, he's sorry, or not necessarily sorry. I don't want to put words in his mouth. And that's why you get the full video, but him explaining himself about the interview and why he did it with the Argentinian outlet, and then Frank de Boer, his response to it and how the team addressed it. You get that it gets cut off a lot when you're looking at media locally or nationally, wherever you're listening to this from. So that's why we put the full videos out there and full audio, and that was well received. So we appreciate that. But head to the site and do some searches there from Atlanta United, and you will get that. Also, go to Twitter and Instagram, Sports Inquirer, all one word. As I mentioned, it was an unofficial live tweet. I wasn't planning to do that for the men's final, but it was so brilliant. And I said later on in the show, we'll break down some elements of that match. But if you subscribe to us on Twitter, you'll be able to see all of that. So I highly recommend that you do that. Facebook and under The Sports Inquirer and Sports Inquirer, we have 2 pages. So make sure you follow either one of those, and you'll get all of our content. And then finally, go to YouTube and SoundCloud and subscribe to us. We're under The Sports Inquirer Show. So just search it, or Sports Inquirer. We have a page for on both of them, both those outlets. And the good part about that is you get to go to the site and subscribe to us. You get all of our future shows as we post them on those different platforms. So instead of checking a page every single day, we like for you to check it every day. But I'm a supporter of different podcasts and different media outlets myself. So I know it can be frustrating checking something every single day. When's it going to come out? When's this going to come out? Best way to do is subscribe it. You get a notice whenever you log on to your page and see everything that we're doing. So whenever we post something new, you'll get to see it, click on it, enjoy it, and go from there. So I always recommend that you do that. And also, you get our archives of previous shows. We've been doing this for quite a bit. for a long time. So when you subscribe to us on those platforms, you can do a search for shows in the past, from Sports Inquirer Show that you're listening to right now to Verbal Submission, which is our combat sports based podcast. And we're recording another edition tomorrow. Just a little preview of that. We're going to break down World Wrestling Entertainment, AEW, UFC, all of that stuff. So we do a show specifically for that. So when you subscribe to that, you'll get to get those archive shows, then the past, present, and future. Stagger Screen, we have a really good NBA free agency breakdown we did about a week ago when it was in the height of the frenzy. We broke down Kawhi Leonard going to the Clippers and Kevin Durant going to the Brooklyn Nets and everything in between. So we have a show on there as well. I might repost it the next day or two to remind people about it, but you go to the site, you'll be able to check all of that out as far as on YouTube and SoundCloud. You subscribe to those. And yeah, make sure you do that, and you'll get all of the goodies that we have coming down the line for you. We're in the midst of college football media days, so we have some future plans, Lord willing, with that as well. So be in the lookout for a lot of college football content, as it's less than a month away, but technically more than 30 days. But by this time next month, you'll be in full preseason mode, and we're starting right now. SEC Media Days and ACC are taking place right now, and seeing some of that as well. So we'll have a lot of Georgia and Georgia Tech when they start their fall camps, and Georgia State as well, and we'll make sure to have all of that for you. So as I said, always the best way to check all of that out and see what we're doing. Let's go to sportsinquirer.net, and all of the links are there for you to subscribe and to check out everything that we're doing. All right, we're going to take our first break, and when we come back, we will break down Atlanta United and the Offside Trap here on the Sports Inquirer Show. All right, welcome back to Sports Inquirer Show. Emerson speaking with you. And Offside Trap portion of our show will break down Atlanta United. Very active past 7 days for the squad with the U.S. Open Cup and their advancement in that, as well as the MLS competition going to the Seattle Sounders a few days ago. But let's start with the U.S. Open Cup and their victory over St. Louis that took place on July 10th. They were able to defeat the St. Louis FC 2-0 at Fifth Third Bank in Kennesaw, Georgia, which is really convenient for us because we are based in Atlanta, but the actual recording of the show takes place in Ackworth, Georgia, which is, if you're not familiar with Metro Atlanta, it's about 30 miles north on the highway. But they played in about 2 exits down from us at Kennesaw State. So that was very beneficial. But they were able to win that contest. Pity Martinez and Joseph Martinez were able to score goals in the second half. And Atlanta was able to advance to the semifinals of the U.S. Open Cup for the first time in franchise history. And they're going to host they're going to visit Orlando City on August 6th. On the St. Louis match itself, some stats for you. Atlanta produced several scoring chances in a very strong first half where they had 73% of possession, and they were able to break through in the 52nd minute when Emerson Hyndman, the new acquisition previously of the Scottish Premier League, he's actually from Texas, he's an American, he's played in Europe, especially specifically the United Kingdom, for close to 10 years from his youth and to now. He made his debut for the team in the 52nd minute. He was able to find Pity Martinez in the center of the box on a nice little pass, and Pity Martinez curled a left-footed shot into the top right corner of the net and made the score 1-0. And in stoppage time, Atlanta was able to increase the lead to 2-0 when Dion Pereira drew a foul in the penalty area. Joseph Martinez was able to take the penalty shot, buried it on the left top corner, and that was his first goal of the tournament itself, and it was a 2-0 victory. Very solid performance. Atlanta's been up and down the past few weeks, and this was one of their up periods. And advancing in the U.S. Open Cup is very important. It takes a lot of priority for several reasons. One, it's a competition they have not won before in their existence. Obviously, winning MLS Cup last year, the domestic title, was very significant for a lot of reasons. But they also want to get the tournament competition trophy as well. So you could tell, and I'm going to play the audio from Frank the Boer and things like that. They want to win it. And secondly, it's within their reach. And with the uncertainty of the MLS season, the U.S. Open Cup is they're in the semifinals. 2 more match victories, and they'll have the Open Cup for the first time in the existence of the franchise. So that's very important to what they're trying to do. But let me play manager Frank de Boer's video, and I'm going to warn you, we hear a lot of Frank de Boer because we had a little bit of catch up with all the Atlanta United content. But let's start with him talking about the victory over St. Louis.
I think I can be very satisfied with the performance of tonight. Maybe the last 50 minutes of the first half we get a little bit sloppy, stupid passes, and they get 1 or 2 chances or small chances out of it. For the rest, I think we played really concentrated, we're patient, and a lot of crosses. Maybe the crosses, the end pass was not that precise that you want to be, but it's a start, and I think that was good. We had a plan, they executed, we stayed concentrated. Also, you see the determination to avoid the equalize. In the last minutes they get 3 corner kicks. And how everybody was determined, to not concede a goal, and then you get your reward at the end with a penalty. So I'm really satisfied with the performance.
And the thing about that matchup as well is St. Louis was playing a 5-man back line for the majority of that contest, especially in the first half. That's how come Atlanta was able to get close to 75% of possession. That's very frustrating for an opponent when you have a team that is set so back on their line. They only would send 1 forward really past the 3/4 mark of the field, and Atlanta had to figure that out. And they tried to play with some long balls and tried to get it to the wings. Miriam had a performance that was very important. And Pity Martinez, I thought, had one of his best performances for the team throughout the night. And the reason for that, I think, was it required possession and required more of the skill set that fits Pity Martinez. Once again, I have to distinguish between Pity and Joseph. We have 2 Martinez guys on the team. So when I say Martinez, I got to make sure I designate for Pity. But with Pity, I think that the comparisons to Miguel Almiron are not fair in regards, not talent-wise. I think both guys are very talented and are been the top South American players in their respective careers. I just think their style of plays are different. Almiron really tracked back defensively and was more of a quarterback for the offense and it was quicker. So you saw more fast twitch movements from Miguel Almiron and that style. I think Pity, while defensively, he does have his struggles, and even though I don't think his job necessarily is to backtrack as much as Almiron did. When he struggles defensively, he's not going to have the ball as much as Almiron did because he doesn't play defensively in that style. And with that, he's a good striker of the ball. He's an okay distributor, but that's just not his strength. They're just different styles of play. And I think fans, supporters, and de Boer have to adjust to that. Now, is Martinez perfect? No. But he has his bad spots. But I think de Boer as well has to find a way to get the maximum talent out of him. And he talks about that performance against St. Louis. And maybe it's a start of maybe some good form from Pity Martinez. So let's hear from de Boer, and I'll elaborate more on the relationship between those 2 gentlemen.
You played really a good game. So I was really happy, of course, for him because he knows he wants to see his level going up, and today, he did a very good step in that. Hopefully he can continue to that, and it's great that he scored a goal, important for the team. Because if you come from Argentina, a big club, River Plate, and being a player of the year, you want to show something. And of course, it's the pressure, but it's good, that he played this kind of games. I think it gives him a boost of confidence and becoming where I think the level that he can bring for us.
And that was manager Frank de Boer talking about Pity. And the interesting thing about that is about 48 hours after that good performance, the video of the interview that Pity Martinez did with the Argentinian media outlet, I believe it was their Fox Sports equivalent of what we have here, discussing how he doesn't have the best communication with Frank de Boer and how he's feels like he has not played in the best position for the team, and broke that down. And it's just interesting how you think on the field things are going well, and hey, he played well, and then off the field it's like not so much. And that's why we were able to speak with Pity and also with Frank de Boer about that. And I just think it's what both guys have points and what they're saying, but I think that it's also unique for Pity in the way the United States media works with soccer. You have to understand the access that media members have that we have is really unusual in the soccer landscape or football landscape around the world. Even the simplest things, we'll start with preparing for a match. The fact that we're able to go to the training ground and speak to the manager and multiple players during the week, that first of all does not happen in Europe, a lot of times in South America, or a lot of professional leagues around the world. So that access usually is not granted. Even the post-match where we speak to the manager and go in the locker room. I remember the first year, now 3 years ago now, that the media was allowed in the locker room. That was a unique concept, or at least post-match, to all of the players, even some of the non-MLS players. The fact that we're able to go in there and talk to them about the match was odd. And the fact that we're able to, the managers, that they're a little more savvy to it, able to speak to them directly was unusual to a lot of people that aren't aware of it. Because in the international scene, usually what happens is you don't talk to the players post-match or during the week before, and you get generic quotes, like a quote sheet from the manager after the match. Because the manager after the match will speak to the Sky Sports or whatever the equivalent is, wherever you're listening, and that's a TV broadcast of the match. So we'll speak to the TV broadcast for a few minutes, and the player might speak to them for a few minutes, and after that, that's it. Now, some places I've seen with the English Premier League, the manager may do a post-match presser with the media, like in the media room. So you see some of it. But just the accessibility of the media between the players and managers is much more open here in the United States than it is where Pity Martinez played professionally in Argentina and other places around the world. So it's not just on him, on Pity. It's just an adjustment to that. So he's had to adjust to that situation. So I think he felt comfortable going to, he said he had a relationship with the reporters in Argentina about that, and that's why I think he was more open and discussed his role with the team and maybe some areas of improvement. So you had that happen, and that's kind of, I don't say blindsided the Atlanta United staff. It was just surprising that he went that route. And I've always heard, and I think in general in life or from players and coaches, the thing I've always heard is that as far as a media member, even when I was working in media relations for the team or for the college, if you say something to the media and bring it out and expose it to the public, at least come to me first about it. And I think what happened there is Frank de Boer has been critical of Pity Martinez's defense and maybe his lack of hustle or engagement in the match. We've seen him substituted several times in the 60th or 70th minute of contest, and that's been something that he is not used to dealing with on a public stage, and furthermore, him having to answer questions about it after a match. So when de Boer makes that statement to us as media about whatever his improvement that he wants to see from Pity Martinez, Pity may take that as an offensive way, and de Boer did say to us, and the videos on our site, that whatever criticism that he's brought to the public, he's brought to Pity Martinez privately. So we have to take a little bit of his word for that. But the point is just the communication, a little bit of a breakdown there. It's going to happen. But I think what they did not, the Atlanta United staff and front office, because Carlos Bocanegra, I think, had a sit-down meeting with Pity Martinez about that scenario, about this situation. And I think they just want, before you go to the media about some concerns or issues, come to us first. So that's the impression I get. Is it going to fracture the team? No. Is Pity Martinez going to get transferred at any point this year? I highly doubt that. Will Frank de Boer be fired after this year? I don't think any of those scenarios are going to take place. But yeah, it just shows that the if the team was winning more than it is, as far as MLS goes, these would be not as big of an issue. And we'll get to the Seattle matchup in a few minutes and the struggles they had up there. But winning would help the scenario a lot more. But they have been inconsistent for the team on this season, and that's going to happen. Now, a highlight from that St. Louis match was the debut of Emerson Hyndman. And I said he played in the Scottish Premier League and trained with English Premier League teams in his past. So he's a very experienced, for a young man, he's trained with the best, very experienced, and he made his debut with Atlanta in that St. Louis contest and had an assist and was very active throughout that match. So let's hear from manager Frank de Boer on his performance. Actually, we're not going to hear from Frank de Boer. I think we're going to hear from Emerson. Let me see what we're going to do. No, we're going to hear from Emerson himself. Yes, we're going to hear from Emerson and his thoughts on his debut with the team.
Obviously, they were really compact first half. They had their legs on them. They're very disciplined. So, we talked about it at halftime, made a few adjustments, and I think they wore down as well. It's hard to do that for 90 minutes as a whole group. So, I thought we did well. Second half, we're kind of exposing the areas they were kind of leaving, and overall, it was much better. They kind of left that area, so I kind of drifted out there a few times to see what would happen, and they kind of just allowed that space. So, obviously, when you keep going out there, they don't want to keep chasing out there, so try to exploit that. Yeah, I think it always does. You can train with them every day, but until you get out there and experience the match with them, you're still new. So, it was great to get out there, and such an important game as well. And fight with them today was great. Thought we, like you said, we had a great second half performance, and followed up with some goals.
All right, so that was Emerson Hyndman from Atlanta United talking about his debut. A very solid performance from him. Showed some good versatility on the offensive end, some good touches. And you got to figure, as he trains further with the team, you'll see him implemented a little bit more, especially with the injuries that United have racked up over the past few weeks. And we're going to break that down. We preview the Houston matchup and tomorrow, in fact. But, yeah, Emerson is going to start a lot over the next few weeks. And he's an American, so that helps out with the U.S. Open Cup requirements. And by information as far as that goes, in the U.S. Open Cup, you are allowed to have only 5 international players, non-Americans, on your roster. Now, I think if there are some players with green cards and other scenarios like that, it gets a little bit more liberal as far as the availability of players. But in essence, I think that's like a Julian Gressel is available to play. Well, they all can play, but he doesn't count against the international rule of players that could be on the roster. But Emerson being an American, that definitely gives him – he's earned a spot to start and to get some playing time. But it helps out with the roster breakdown as well. So we're going to see him quite active over the next few weeks. Atlanta did head up to Seattle and face the Sounders on Sunday afternoon, which was July 14th, and they dropped the contest 2-1. And let's see. Do some. Okay, there we go. Yep, we're 25 minutes into the show. I'm editing while I'm recording, so you're getting a little bit inside out of how things are. So all those people, a peeve that I've seen when I'm listening to shows or watching them, especially long form like this, is they don't give a time breakdown when certain topics are discussed. So I try to do my best as far as giving you guys when I go to a different topic or jump into different things. So this is the Atlanta-Seattle portion of the broadcast. So you're very welcome for having this portion of the Offside Trap marked by a minute for you. All right, so Atlanta did have its struggles, losing 2-1 at Seattle on Sunday afternoon at CenturyLink Field. Joseph Martinez was able to score his 13th goal of the season, so he is on a scoring streak of 5 consecutive league matches. However, Harry Shipp's 71st minute goal proved to be the game winner for the Sounders. Seattle took the lead in 58th minute from a goal by Raul Ruidiaz. Took a pass from Roldan. Really solid play from him. Able to chip the ball passed Miles Robinson in the air, volleyed it around Robinson, and then hit it with his right foot past Brad Guzan to the left corner. It was a golazo, obviously, arguably one of the goals of the year, not only for the Sounders but for all of MLS. But it's just very sloppy play from Atlanta, a lot of giveaways in the contest. They were unable to consistently keep the ball on their feet. And some will argue that the surface wasn't good, and it was not the best, but both teams played on it. And overall, you just saw a lack of consistent possession from Atlanta. Now, Martinez's goal was very impressive. He was able to score about 7 minutes after the goal from Raul, and this was in the 60s. And Pity Martinez with a cross off of a corner, and Joseph was left unmarked, hit it past the goalkeeper, and tied the score 1-1. However, Seattle took the lead 6 minutes later as Ship capped off the counterattack. Atlanta, a giveaway by Leandro Gonzalez-Perez, went to Lauderio and played it to Jordan Morris, who ran on the right side, did a cross right in the penalty area. The Ship, he chipped it into the right corner, past Brad Guzan, goalkeeper for Atlanta, made the score 2-1, and that was all she wrote. So a very disappointing performance in that regard when after Martinez scores the goal, you got to get a result there and get a point. I know Atlanta has supporters and the team itself have been disappointed in getting all of these ties and dropping points. But when you're playing in Seattle in that environment, you get a 1-1 draw, you have to secure a tie there. You have to get a point. Very similar to when they played the Red Bulls 2 weeks ago, and you go up through another Martinez late goal, and you're up 3-2, and then you give up a score to Bradley Wright Phillips in stoppage time, and the score is tied 3-3. It feels like a loss, and this was a literal loss, but a tie would have felt like a mini victory with the travel and having to play a Seattle team that's fighting for its playoff lives. So just disappointment all around for the team. And Frank de Boer did speak with the media afterwards. We have to thank Atlanta United Communications for the upcoming audio that we have from Seattle. So we appreciate getting that. So here's Frank de Boer talking about the match against Seattle.
Well, I think it was a tight game. I think we could be up front, they could be up front, and so I think a draw at the end maybe was the best result, And but in sport, it's always a lot of times it's decided with mistakes, and that's human, and of course it's a pity that it was on our side that. We made a mistake, and at the end we conceded the goal from that, and so it was quite frustrating because I cannot say that we did play bad or something like that. We had our opportunities there, some small chances, and I really had the feeling that we were really into the game, and very disappointed, of course, about the result because again. We had to get a minimum 1 point out of this game. The yellow card that Franco Escobar received, I think it's really a disgrace. For me, it's a disgrace. I think the guy makes a foul on him. He's earlier at the ball. He's going in suddenly, and because he is hurt, he gets a foul. He enters in that challenge. So Franco was the first to the ball, and he made a fantastic challenge. And suddenly he gets a yellow card. Now he's suspended. I think it was unbelievable. Joseph gets a flying tackle on his ankles. They didn't receive any yellow card, and we get 3 yellow cards, and 2 for nothing, I think. So
the Miles Robinson one.
Yes,
the other.
And he said, he was through. Well, I think what 3 men of us are still running there for that. So I think it's unbelievable. That was frustrating, from my side, to see that happening. And again, because Brek probably not in. Ambrose probably not in, and then you have, of course, New Franco suspended. So, we have to puzzle a little bit and have to come up with a decent team against Houston because and they have a very good team also. So you have to be prepared.
And now, as I mentioned, Frank de Boer discussing the Seattle loss. Several things from there. First of all, the yellow card in Escobar. Yeah, and this was one of my pet peeves, and I put it on Twitter while watching the match. And it happens in a lot of sports, but especially in soccer. Football to a lesser degree. I'm talking the NFL when I say football. When in basketball, you see it as well. When the referee or the official gives a foul, or in this case, a card, for the result of the situation or the result of the foul and not the foul itself. Personally, I thought Escobar went for the ball fairly with the Seattle Sounder player. But what ended up happening is the Seattle Sounder player, he ended up getting hurt and attended to by the medical staff. And I think that led the official to give the yellow to Escobar. If the Seattle player, and I'm not saying he milked his injury or being hurt or things like that. He may have been, he may have not been. That may have been gamesmanship. I don't know. But if he hopped back up and continued playing, then I don't think a card would have been given. And I don't like seeing that type of officiating. I'm not saying that because we cover Atlanta United. If you've heard the show, I've been very critical of the team, and good and bad, about what they do. So I'm not being objective or a homer. Never will be. But yeah, I didn't think that was a deserved yellow. And we'll talk about the implications of that in a few minutes. The Robinson yellow, I thought that was a little bit more fair. I think that the player was past Robinson. And if you impede a player from movement towards the offensive end, and in that way, if you grab them, yeah, I think a yellow card is warranted there. So that one I don't agree with next to so much with Frank, but that's going to happen. But overall, just you hear the disappointment of not getting at least a point from that match. And let's hear from Brad Guzan, his thoughts after Seattle and the disappointment of that contest.
Yeah, I mean, again, when you come on the road, it's difficult, and you come to a place like Seattle, it's very difficult. We had chances in the first half. When you're on the road, you gotta find the back of the net with one of those. You gotta punish them when you get those half chances, and they were probably better than half chances. But in saying that, again, we shoot ourselves in the foot. Not good enough in certain areas. Pay the price. It's not karma. You make your own luck, and we need to find a way to come out of this, however you want to call it.
Funk.
Yeah, we need to find a way, because it's not bad luck. It's not just one-off games. I mean, another day they could have had a few more. Second half, it's outside of the post. First half, they get in behind us once or twice. So yeah, it's certainly not bad luck. It's certainly not karma. It's down to us, and we need to be better. Yeah, again, we got to look at this and figure out why this is happening. Every day is a chance to get better. Every day is a chance to figure out or try to figure out why and how we get better. It's not just the defensive side of the ball. It's everywhere on the pitch. We need to be better, create more chances. We need to defend better. We need to be better when we have the ball. Easy turnovers all over the pitch. We need to be better.
And now is the goalkeeper and captain for that match, Brad Guzan, discussing the loss, and really hurt loss in a major way for the team, because Brek Shea, he was substituted in the 7th minute after suffering a right knee injury from a tackle in the 50th minute. He was replaced by Michael Parkhurst, who was subbed out for Brandon Vasquez. A very unusual situation of Parkhurst being subbed into the match and then subbed out. You rarely see that in soccer, but I think Atlanta being down 2-1, they really wanted to get that draw, and Vasquez provided more of an offensive situation. Parkhurst has had his struggles on the field this year, just different positions, trying to find his role with the squad. And so I don't think it was necessarily an indictment on him, but he has struggled defensively in certain moments. But again, Vasquez in there was needed at least to get try to get that second goal. But Shea, unfortunately, and we got confirmation today from United that he had season-ending surgery on his right knee. And if you saw the injury, it looked like there was some contact, but not a lot. But unfortunately, the way his leg went, you could tell that it could have been a season ender, and it looks like, well, it is going to be. So he'll be out the rest of this campaign. Wish him well, health-wise, and everything along those lines. But that's a major loss for the team. He was really starting to find himself on the squad, and as a back and as a left back or right back or in that type of position, as a winger, I would say. And he is now out for the rest of the year, so they have to figure out what to do there. I know George Bello, he's trying to work his way back onto the squad, but he may be a long way off from returning to the team. And Coach mentioned as well, Mikey Ambrose, he has been dealing with injuries himself and unavailable for a good amount of the season. He's been in and out. So, yeah, they have to. That's why you saw the acquisition of Emerson. He will play a role in that regard. Or do we see Julian Gressel, who has been playing all over the field? He's been playing in the middle a little bit more this year, but do we see him try to find a way more towards that winger position? So a lot of juggling. That doesn't even include the injuries to Tito Villalba and Ezekiel Barco. They've been out for a substantial amount of time, and they're trying to find their way back on the team as far as health-wise. So you met all those injuries and trying to find a way to get the team going. So the Brek Shea injury is hurts the team quite a bit there. So see what happens there. As I mentioned, Joseph Martinez, that was his 13th goal of the year. So he has 8 goals in his last 5 MLS matches and 9 goals in his last 6 matches in all competitions. At least at Atlanta United. We know he was a Copa America representing Venezuela, and he is now back on the squad and continuing to score at a very high rate. But yeah, in the match itself, he seemed like he was a little bit all over the place too. I've been critical of him playing so far away from the penalty box area, and it seemed like he was finding a way to finally be more towards the front end of the field and being more in that penalty box striker area. But this match, though, he was tracking back back to midfield, and he's done that under the Boer system, but it seemed like he was playing there a lot more than expected in the match. So he was able to score the goal, but it was on a set piece when he had to be in the penalty area. But yeah, I guess they have to figure out how to get him more involved. Pity Martinez, it was his 5th assist of the season that he was able to get on the Martinez goal and set off the corner. Guzan, he had a season-high 4 saves in the contest. And Franco Escobar, he's another one that will at least be out for the Houston contest because he picked up his 8th caution of the year. So he's not going to play tomorrow night against Houston. The potential of an appeal was shot down pretty quickly because I guess you cannot appeal yellows. And I'm giving you kind of the reality of it. So he will not be playing tomorrow night. The Atlanta lineup, I don't know what they're going to do as far as their positioning. As I said, tomorrow night at least, no Shea, no Escobar. I believe no Villalba, no Barco, no Ambrose. So I don't know what the scenario will be as far as the Atlanta goes. Wild might get a start. You never know. I assume Lorenowitz as well. I think he's still dealing with his suspension from his foul after the New York Red Bulls contest. So I don't think he's available as well. We got to confirm that. We'll see what happens there. So I guess a lot of questions as far as what the lineup is going to be for Houston and the match itself against Houston. Atlanta is currently in 4th place in the Eastern Conference. The Dynamo sit 8th in the West. They're 2 points back of a playoff spot in the Western Conference. Very contrasting situations as far as home and road. And actually, the series history, they've split their first 2 matches in MLS. The first match took place 2 years ago in May of 2017. Atlanta won 4-1 at Bobby Dodd Stadium. Bobby Dodd memories. That's where Atlanta used to play their home matches. They currently play at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. But before that, they played on the campus of Georgia Tech at Bobby Dodd. So they got the win on May of 2017, the first matchup. The second matchup, an opening weekend of 2018, Houston won 4-0. And I remember that match was a season opener for 2018. Included Miguel Almiron missing a penalty kick. Probably Atlanta's one of their worst performances in history of the franchise was that season opener back in 2018. So they split the matchups. Currently, Atlanta has a 6-1-3 record at Mercedes-Benz Stadium this year, while Houston enters the match 1-7-0 on the road. They have really struggled away from the confines of Houston. So here is manager Frank the Boer. I said we hear from Frank a lot this Sports Inquirer Show. I think this might be his last audio from Frank, but he previews the matchup itself against Houston.
No, not only Manotas, but also Martinez and Quito. And so the four up front, they have pace, good quality. And, again, we have to be alert, switched on for every second because it's, they had a lot of South Americans in, they put a lot of heart in it and quite direct also, put Ellis is always, on the run, and when he's on the run it's quite hard to catch him, he showed it also against LAFC. It's unbelievable that they lost the game, if you see the first half they could maybe have to be 4-0 up, and in the last second they score, of the first half they scored a 1-1, so maybe mentally they're really not there, but I think it's a nice team to watch, and they have nice players, creative players, and we have to be our top. What they said. They play very positive and don't be afraid, and go for it. And, we have to go for it also.
And that was Manager Frank the Boer discussing Houston, and we'll end on Julian Gressel himself, talking about the struggles of the team and just the areas of improvement that they need to have, and previewing the Houston matchup himself. So got about 3 minutes of Julian Gressel, and now conclude the Offside Trap portion of our show. And once his audio ends, we'll come right back to the Stagger Screen where we discuss some NBA transactions. But here is Julian Gressel, and now conclude Offside Trap.
I don't really know. It feels just like a grind, and that is mentally, physically, it's just the nature of the season, we have so many games, and you obviously have a break where you kind of completely, try and get away, but then obviously you don't want to get away too much because in the middle of the season, so it's just, it's been tough. And Frank knows that I can play anywhere, he asked me to, and that's really all he needs to know. If he decides to play me there, I'll play there. If not, then we'll figure out otherwise.
The schedule's been so crazy this year, and just so happens Atlanta's had quite a fair amount of injuries. Is there any? Do you think that maybe that it's not a direct cause, but do you feel like fatigued where you are an injury risk when you're playing as many minutes?
Yeah, I think it's proven that you have a higher injury risk when you play a lot more games, especially after having a short off season. All of that stuff I think plays a role. Where you saw it with Kansas City, they had the same thing. Last year you saw it with Toronto. Same thing, so it's definitely not just us, and we're just going to have to push through, and we knew that it was going to be like this, we knew that there were going to be injuries along the way. Obviously, that they were going to be this significant. This is obviously unfortunate, but yeah, it's just, like I said, it's a grind, and you got to be mentally up for the challenge, and it's really mentally, more than anything else, to really come in and really do the right things all the time, and really be completely there to just really focus on what we need to do in order to be the best that we can be on the field. The travel obviously is tough, but Wednesday to Sunday was actually okay. I think that one extra day really helps. It's actually this game that's going to be a bit tougher. There's Sunday to Wednesday, where you only have 2 days. But today I'm still feeling pretty beat up about the game a couple of days ago, but there's obviously a lot of conversation going on between Frank and sports science, and obviously as players of how we feel, and I'm telling you now that there's not one player in this locker room that says I want to sit out. That's just not who we are as a team, and not who I've gotten to know, or so it's just really, sometimes also pushing through things and then obviously playing, and maybe in the second half you could feel it, but it doesn't take away anything in terms of us not wanting to to kind of no, we have to no, it's not that. We want to be out there and we want to grind and we want to battle and all those kind of things, and ultimately it just didn't end up being what we wanted.
All right, welcome back to Sports Inquirer Show. Emerson here with you. So let's get to Stagger Screen, NBA transactions. There have been several activities taking place since we last recorded our show. I'm not worried about Kawhi Leonard signing a 3-year deal with the Clippers with a third-year player option. He's lining himself up for a massive extension. That's how you have to look at the scenario. The days of signing the 6-7 year, well, first of all, they're not allowed to do this, but the days of signing the 8-year contract, maximum money, those are done. Players want flexibility. So the fact that Kawhi Leonard will be available to be a free agency in the summer of 2021, when he can sign him an even bigger contract than he has right now, and plus it puts him in line for free agency with LeBron James, Paul George, Giannis Antetokounmpo, a lot of other elite talents that I'm blanking on right now. I think Anthony Towns as well. So you put that all together, Leonard gives himself flexibility that he can use in the future. I highly doubt that he's going to leave the Clippers. They have all the check marks for what he would want, you would perceive, even though Leonard doesn't talk too much. But you have to figure that the Clippers, they are during the West Coast, specifically in the southern part of the state where he's from, where he's always wanted to go home and play in that part of the country. The Clippers are an organized franchise from the ownership of Ballmer to Jerry West and Lawrence Frank in the front office, Doc Rivers as the head coach. All of those guys are elite at their respective levels. So you have that going for you. You have Paul George, you expect to be a top 10 NBA player alongside Kawhi, who someone made the case him being the best player in the world right now. So he has a top 10 guy alongside him. If things work out for the Clippers, I think he's not going to go anywhere. But you have to give yourself flexibility if you can as a player, and the management understands that and respects that decision. So I was not surprised that he did that. I actually thought if he went to the Raptors and returned to Toronto, he would have done a 1-1 where it's a 2-year contract, first year with the team, second year player option, so that he could put himself out there even more to sign an extension for a large amount of money or do a similar 3-year deal, third-year player option. So that news came down since our last show. Not surprised at all by that. A big move, though, in the NBA was Oklahoma City Thunder trading Russell Westbrook to Houston Rockets for Chris Paul, 2 first-round picks in 2024 and 2026, and they swapped picks in 2021 and 2025. So in essence, you're looking at Russell Westbrook to Houston for Chris Paul and some picks. I've been critical of Russell Westbrook for the past few years. I thought that his MVP year, when he had average triple-double, it should have gone to James Harden. Now, as far as the MVP goes, I think he's played very selfishly throughout the majority of his career. And you say, how can you say that when he has averages a triple-double, which means he has more than 10 assists a game? But the way he gets the assist and the way he pads the stats, I've not been a big supporter of. But the man is still a top 10 talent in the league. Tremendous player. And it's weird seeing Oklahoma City go from having the trio of Harden, Durant, and Westbrook, and now having neither one of those guys and being in rebuild mode. I thought that the Harden situation, that was a weird one when he left there to sign the deal with the Houston Rockets, or technically I think it was a trade, where if they just offered a few more $1 million, they could have kept Harden. But I think they didn't see Harden, I don't think, becoming the MVP player that he has become. I didn't see it personally. So the Thunder, they're even more close to the scenario. So you have that situation like, well, we let an MVP go, but it's unfortunate, but it kind of happens. Where they made their mistake, though, was hitching their wagon to Westbrook instead of Kevin Durant. while Westbrook is maybe the most athletic point guard we've ever seen in the league, I'm not saying the best, but as far as athleticism wise and the ability to play up and down the court, Westbrook is on the short list of most athletic guys that ever played the position. And he's going to be a Hall of Famer. I said he's averaged triple-double 3 consecutive years. You cannot ignore that fact. So the he's going to be an all-time great. Not top 10 all-time, where I think Durant can end up, but still a Hall of Famer and all of those accolades. But when you have a 7-footer that can play both ends of the court like Kevin Durant and has a demeanor of, I know he's very sensitive and with the internet and has had Twitter issues and all that stuff as far as interacting with fans and having, I guess, I say verbal jousts, but some tensions there. The man is still an elite talent. You could tell he liked Oklahoma City, but just the situation, him playing there at Westbrook was not best for his career, so he moved on to Golden State. We all know what happened there. So when you made that decision to sign Westbrook to the massive extension and let Durant go, or not make more of an effort to keep him, I think that Oklahoma City could have. This is the result of that. Westbrook and Paul George, 2 top 5 MVP. I know Paul was in the top 3. I think Westbrook was probably top 6 or 7, but you have 2 guys with career years, and you don't even exit the first round. Matter of fact, you get handled pretty easily by Portland. Now, I know Lillard had a great series in McCollum, and Portland's a solid team, but you have 2 career years of guys in their prime from Westbrook and Paul George, and you don't even advance past the first round. When you get into that scenario, you have to reevaluate things, and when George demanding the trade or forcing the trade to the Clippers, that's you knew Westbrook was not going to be long for the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, is he their best player in history? You probably have to say that. Now, well, and when the franchise has been in Oklahoma City, they were in Seattle for ages and then moved to Oklahoma City. And I guess technically they're still the same franchise, but then you throw Gary Payton in there and some other guys. But no, he's one of the all-time best players that they've ever had in Oklahoma City, and they moved on from him, and they're going to be in for a long rebuild. Now, for Houston, having Harden and Westbrook on the same team is a unique scenario. They're both the highest usage rates in history, at least from the guard position, have been produced by those guys over the past 2-3 years. So in essence, they need the ball in their hands. And I know they played together in the past, Oklahoma City, but the scenarios were different. They were younger. I know they're tight and they're friends. And that's another thing. You hear about these guys saying that, oh, we're buddies and we're friends and we want to play together. That sounds good conceptually, but let's hear from them in February when they've lost 3 or 4. And it's going to happen. It happens to every team. When they're in the middle of a little bit of a losing streak, are they still going to be boys, still be friends? It's one thing to play in California and some pickup games in L.A. in the middle of the summer and hanging out and doing some drills, but to actually be on the same team together, that's tough. And they've done it before, as I said, early in their career, but they're both alphas at this stage of their career. We'll see who can concede or how it can work out. But overall, though, I think Houston was maybe the 4th or 5th best team in the West, behind the Lakers and the Clippers. I think Denver and Utah are going to be very good regular season teams. So I have Houston about maybe 4th or 5th before the trade. I have them still there right now. Now, when the playoffs come, and if those guys find a groove and they can make a run possibly, but right now I thought it was a lateral move for the teams. And Houston was trying to avoid the Chris Paul contract and its massive amount of money, yet you take on Westbrook, which is just as bad, and you had to give up picks. So, and draft picks I know are not as valuable as they used to be, but from the Houston side of things, and we'll transition to them, you have to figure it's a make-or-break year for that franchise. With Harden and Westbrook, this is probably their last peak years. The league has changed. I think guards can last a lot longer than they used to, but it's a combustible situation. And with Daryl Morey, who is supposed to be the champion of statistics and the innovator of revolutionizing the basketball game, when they act like the Rockets, like statistics have never in scouting have advanced statistics. I've never been in the NBA. I literally played the lowest level of basketball you can, middle school and high school basketball, and we had a scouting report. And we would say this guy likes to go left or go right the majority of the time. What is that? Those are analytics. Those are statistics. So the fact that Houston likes to act like they've invented them and they're playing above the field and revolutionizing things. No, you're not. You're just putting fancy numbers and names to concepts that have been around for 30 or 40 years. But I digress. But for the Rockets, it's a make or break year. For Oklahoma City, man, Sam Presti's he's been very loyal to the franchise. They've been loyal to him. He's drafted tremendously. I mean, he's drafted 3 Hall of Famers by the time his tenure as Oklahoma City is going to be over. So you can't deny that, but being unable to keep the squad together is a knock on him. And when in a league that's gone towards acquiring assets through trades and through big free agency deals, he's going to go a different route with draft picks. And that's going to be a long rebuild for the Oklahoma City Thunder, who their whole time in Oklahoma City have been a playoff team. And they've had a marquee guy. Because you got to remember, while Durant played his first year in Seattle, made the move to Oklahoma City. He's been on the team. Then they drafted Westbrook and then Harden. And those guys went to the NBA Finals, lost to the Heat. But they've always had a marquee guy and been a playoff team in that market. They're not going to be a playoff team this year. They're going to be on the bottom half of the Western Conference. So struggles are going to be there. And I'm interested to see if they can survive this. And it's not going to happen now, but mark my words, in a few years, it could be a move there. If they move, I don't know if they go back to Seattle. I think with Bennett and their current ownership, that'll never happen. But man, I think you could look at some franchises, St. Louis or some cities that might be in the market for a squad. I say keep an eye out for that. And as far as Chris Paul and Oklahoma City, you got to figure that with 3 years and $124 million left, while Oklahoma City can afford him as far as salary cap goes, why would he want to play there? He's not going to be happy there. He's already, I don't want to say he's cranky, but he has a very overt, strong alpha personality. And he's going to be a Hall of Famer himself. But at this stage of his career, and he's the back end of his prime, he may not be in his prime anymore, period. Oklahoma City's not the spot for him. I think ultimately ends up with Miami. It just makes sense. Pair him and Jimmy Butler together. Miami puts himself in the playoff position, makes himself relevant in the Eastern Conference. They're just doing some haggling over trade, not trades. The trade itself is being with draft picks. They're haggling over that. Eventually they'll work it out, and he'll end up there. But, man, him being Oklahoma City playing this year, I just highly doubt it. So we'll see what happens with that. And last note on the NBA, Summer League. I watched some of it with Zion Williamson playing with the Pelicans, R.J. Barrett with the Knicks, a little bit of that. My thing about Summer League is it has to happen. I was watching The Jump on ESPN and hearing them report that executives may hold out picks from playing in Summer League. And especially when anyone gets an injury, like Zion Williamson, and he tweaked his knee a little bit, sprained it, and was out of the Summer League after playing that one game against the Knicks. Now the fear is that all these guys are going to not perform in the Summer League. I highly doubt that for several reasons. One, it's good acclimation to the professional game for these players. Now you have to adjust what you expect from them, because I don't care how many times you guys have been in the gym during their draft training and all that stuff. The majority of them have not played a significant minute of basketball since March, whether it's NCAA tournament or even internationally. They have not played any significant basketball in close to 3 months. And you expect them to go from a few practices with some guys they're not familiar with and go out there and play a competitive matchup. That's not going to happen. So you have to temper your expectations, put them on a minute limits for certain guys, especially those. When it was Zion, Coach K talked about him being on the banquet circuit, and he really has been. He messed himself up saying the ESPYs were a distraction. ESPYs were after Summer League, so we can't use that. But yeah, these guys, they've been training for the draft and everything like that, but they're not in basketball shape. So that's why you can't take too much from Summer League especially if you're a big guy. You're not going to be in condition to perform at a maximum level. But still, you have to play there. You meet your coaches, you meet your staff, you get some camaraderie going there. So I think Summer League is a necessity, even if you have an elite player or your star draft pick. Just limit their minutes. Make sure you're watching how they train and get them used to the pro game. It's not training camp and it's not even preseason games. I get that. But you need to get them acclimated to the professional level. And then two, Summer League has made such an investment, or the NBA, in the Summer League in Las Vegas. Summer League used to take place in Utah and in Sacramento and kind of in Orlando was a big spot. But they've honed in on Las Vegas, and they're trying to sell tickets and make money. So if you're the Pelicans and you try to say, oh, Zion's not going to play in the Summer League, or if you're the Knicks saying, RJ Barrett, we're not going to play him, or John Morant, we're not going to play him if you're Memphis, no. That's not going – the league will find a way to send word, whether directly from Commissioner Adam Silver or to his lieutenants, to somebody on those respective teams and saying, no, we're selling tickets. We have every game on the ESPN platforms. We're going to find a way to get these matches going, get these guys in these contests and get it going. So Summer League is not going to go away. It'll still be available. It's just an adjustment. You got to figure it out. It's kind of like preseason football where teams have made adjustments and saying if you're a star player, you need your reps in game competition, but third preseason game, you might get a half in, but then fourth game, you're not going to play at all. You might only play a handful of series in the first game or the second game. You figure out the way to do it. But Summer League isn't going anywhere, and I don't think you're going to see guys boycotting it. All right, we're going to take one final break, and then when we come back, we're going to break down the strong performances on Wimbledon here on the Sports Inquirer Show. All right, welcome back to Sports Inquirer Show, final segment of our broadcast, the miscellaneous department. Yeah, as I mentioned in our open, I was in the gym during the fifth sets, actually the fourth and fifth set of the Novak Djokovic-Roger Federer men's single final that took place on July 14th. While we've had our issues with watching golf and trying to get ourselves into that, and I'm going to be watching a good amount of the British Open this weekend. We're giving it a shot. I've always liked tennis. And I think when I'm a little younger, I'm too young to remember the Connor and Bjorn Borg and John McEnroe playing days. I was born in 1981, so their peaks were like 70s and early 80s. I was too young to remember that. But I do remember the 90s, and Michael Chang and Jim Courier and Andre Agassi and obviously great Pete Sampras. All those guys, Hall of Famers throughout there. A little bit Stefan Edberg, a little Boris Becker. I remember those guys playing in the 90s and getting into the sport, and had a little bit of a lull after that. And I think the biggest thing was there are no Americans, top American players. Andy Roddick, he won a U.S. Open. He hit the scene and got his one major, but really didn't. I think played for another major, but not at a consistent level as some of those early guys I mentioned. But what happened is we had the emergence of three European players who may as well be American, just the way the way the coverage is. And those guys are Djokovic, Federer, and Nadal. And I think what helps is that we're an international society now. I think there's less of that patriotism of if it's not an American, we don't care about it. Obviously, there's some people that's still a holdup for them. I think that's beyond. You should be beyond that now. I mean, Djokovic being Serbian, Federer obviously Swiss, and Nadal being a Spaniard. I don't think it's an issue at all. All three guys speak English very well and play on the biggest stages. They're almost American in a way. I mean, honestly, if those guys, if you didn't know their nationalities and you're watching them play, it's not like, oh, that's it. I mean, I guess you could say maybe he has a European style or whatever if you really want to go that route. But no, those three guys are really carrying the game, and I think they may be the three best players of all time. And I was a little hesitant to say that because, as I said, I'm partial to I loved Andre Agassi, and Sampras had the most majors before Federer lapped him or took over that lead. And obviously, you got to look at Rod Laver winning the Grand Slam as an amateur and a professional, a mark that will never ever. unless they really unless amateurs get paid and all that stuff, you'll never ever see that distinction happen again in history of the game. That's the equivalent of your local college guy winning all 4 majors and still staying in college and playing around a little bit as a pro, and then 6 years later winning another set of winning all 4 majors. 2 Grand Slams as an amateur and pro not happening again. So, Laver definitely he has to be considered, greatest of all time. But the way these guys are performing and at their ages, especially Federer, who was in his late 30s, and then Nadal and Djokovic in their early 30s, where careers and peaks are usually done, is a tremendous seeing these 3 guys perform. The match itself, when I was watching a little bit of it here and there. When I saw the second set, Federer 6-1, I was like, Djokovic won the first set 7-6 on a tiebreaker, and we'll get the tiebreakers in a moment because it played a major factor in the match. And Federer won the second set 6-1. I was like, man, Federer is going to roll. He has confidence. He may be the best Wimbledon player in history with all of his multiple titles. So you figure he's going to roll. Then Djokovic won that third set 7-6, 7-4 tiebreaker. I saw that mark, and this is when I was in the gym at this stage. I didn't see that third set really too much, but it was on the TV. But when I saw the fourth set start, I was like, wow, you have Djokovic winning 2 tiebreakers against Federer in Wimbledon. You got to figure that third set is going to be, to win that third set is going to be very easy for him. So we enter the fourth, and Djokovic goes up 4-2. And serves are not being broken as much as you think. The fact that Federer came back and won that fourth set 6-4, breaking Djokovic's serve multiple times, incredible effort by Federer to get it to a 5th set. At that stage, I'm like, it's destiny. Federer's going to win this. The way he came back showed a tremendous heart and stones to do that. But then ultimately, you get to the 5th set. I've been a big advocate, if you heard the show before, and we've seen it with the Isner matches in Wimbledon, because Wimbledon's unique. They've always played out the 5th set, no tiebreaker to the very end. So we've seen Isner play and Anderson, the South African, play the 5th set, 30, 40, 50 points, all that craziness. Especially when guys are struggling to break serve. Those guys have big serves, so their serve doesn't get broken often. So I've been an advocate for having a match go to tiebreaker. And, man, I was regretting that when I was watching the match, because that's when you start seeing the guys really put on a tremendous performance. And Federer I think it was up 8-7, I want to say. So we're beyond 6-6, which is usually when it goes to tiebreak. I think Federer was up 8-7, serving for the match, and was up on that point. He had 2 serves, I believe, 2 points to get the victory. The fact that Djokovic came back with some cross-court hits, no nerves of steel, did not even fault or hit the ball into the net and won that point was exceptional. As I put on my Twitter, I put Federer is not human coming back from being down 4-2 in the fourth, then Djokovic is an alien himself to come back being down, not only down, I said 8-7, but down on that point. Federer served for the match and was unable to close out Djokovic was amazing. And then it got to 12-12 in the 5th set, and that's when we got to the tiebreaker. And Djokovic ultimately won that 7-3. So all 3 of his sets won were on tiebreakers. And I would have been intrigued to see it go a little bit further. John McEnroe, he wants it to be a 5th set tiebreaker at 6-6, like a traditional match. I'm not so sure about that. I do like them playing a little bit longer than tied at 6. But you can't have them playing into the 30s or 40s. It gets to a point where it does get a little bit exhaustive. But man, the shot making on both sides, I thought Federer actually outplayed Djokovic, if that makes sense. I thought Federer's forehand was on point. His serve and volley game was tremendous, and for him to be, I'm making this. I think we're the same age, so I'm making him sound like he's ancient. In tennis terms, he is a very older gentleman, but his serve and volley game was on point. You saw Djokovic go to the net a little bit more than expected. He even had a night. He dived for a point and got that on the grass. Because that's always Federer, I thought, had more versatility in his game. But if you break down all three guys, if you just kind of bullet points, Federer is the most complete player that I've ever seen. I thought Sampras would be there, but Sampras was more big serve, strong forehand, things along those lines. Agassi, I thought, was the best returner of a serve that I've ever seen until Nadal came along. But Federer it's a complete game. Hits every shot that you can imagine, and such fluidity in his game. Nadal is the best defensive player I've ever seen, especially when he was at his peak. And I think that comes with playing on clay and longer points and just on that surface. But his ability, and being the lefty too, adds a little bit of a different element. His ability to defend is amazing, and not as big of a serve as Federer and Djokovic, but in Nadal's resolve, you have to beat him down to the very end to get a victory. Djokovic, I think, at his peak, though, is better than both of them. Now, career-wise, I don't know if Djokovic's going to reach the 20 that Federer is at now. Nadal's going to have a say because as long as he is walking, that French is going to be his. So that's going to be at least one for him. You can say the thing about Djokovic and the Australian Open. He starts off the season so well there. But Djokovic has that combination of he's not as good in the net as Federer is, but his serve is just as good. His forehand is strong. His backhand is improved. His serve it's a little. You could tell early in his career with the multiple bounce, he bounces the ball a lot. I think that was like a nervous tick, and he still has some inconsistencies at times, but it's a lot less than it used to be. So you add that element with the serve. His volley game is solid. It's not as good as Federer's, but it's just right there. As I said, I think his defense is not as good as Nadal's, and his serve and volley is not as good as Federer's, but the median is so good with him. He's so consistent. And he had that lull a few years ago, about 14 months without a major. And he was going through he's had different coaches, and he dealt with all that stuff. But now you see him, and I don't want to talk about personal lives, but he's talked about it. So he's a father now. He's married, and he's very settled. His staff seems to be pretty consistent over the past few years, and you've seen him do that. So, yeah, that match, I don't know if it matches 2008, Nadal and Federer, because that had the rain delay element, and Wimbledon. That was the best match I ever saw. Just the elements of those two guys at their primes, and I mentioned the rain delays, and there were no lights back then at Wimbledon. There was no roof, so they had to get their match in. They're playing in the darkness. Just the theatrical elements of that match were very, very strong. But as far as technicalities and actual execution of shots, it's very hard to beat what you saw in that match. And those three guys are, in their own ways, are bringing a unique element to the game as far as age-wise. And they all three weren't late bloomers necessarily, but you didn't see them burn out at 15 or 16 years old. And that's when you see Coco Gauff, and we'll mention the women's bracket in a moment, but 15 years old, reached the fourth round. It seems like on the women's side, and the men's side back in the day too, teenagers played a lot. So by the time you got into 29 or 30, you were almost done. You'd be surprised. You look at with Borg and Connors and McEnroe. I've looked up Sampras. I think he got one in his 30s, and even Agassi. They may have been in their early 30s. But by the time you were 32, you were done winning majors. And all three of these guys have won multiple majors, I think past that age 32 or 33. And they're not going anywhere. Federer, you have to figure, is the one that, he's 37, turns 38 this year, I believe. Wimbledon, I said, could be his because he's just so great on grass. But I think the hard surfaces, which is the Australian and the U.S. Open, the speed might be a little bit much for him. He's never been a great clay court player. He has a French, so you got to respect that. But clay is not his best element. This might be he might make another final, but this might have been his best chance to get one final major to get past that 20 mark. Nadal is going to have the French, as I said, until he retires. So you got to figure he might have one or two more of those, but he's human, and his 33, age-wise, is the equivalent of Federer's 38. Just the way he plays and the hard, aggressive style that he performs at. So you got to look at that as an interesting scenario. Djokovic, as I said, he has, I believe, 5 or 6 Australian Opens. So that's kind of his court. All three guys kind of have their own court of dominance, and then the U.S. Opens become kind of any man's game. But yeah, those three guys performing at such a high level in their mid to late 30s, early 30s, is great to see. And now I mentioned that, saying being at the gym, gym is 2 levels. Upper level is like the area where you can stretch, and there's some ab machines and ellipticals. So I went up there because they had a TV there. I just didn't want to be in the way of anybody. But I would look down on the lower level, and you would see, and there's some big yoked guys in the gym. I mean, I have some size to me, but there's some monsters in the gym. And you're just seeing them sitting there watching the match, in between sets, of course. It was just very interesting. And then 2 older gentlemen, they literally sat down near the TVs that are where the ellipticals and the treadmill is, and they sat down and watched the match. It really caught a lot of eyes. I think it had their best ratings in almost 10 years. So it was just very interesting seeing those guys perform at a high level. And I mentioned the women's side, and with Halep being able to win her match over Serena Williams in the finals 6-2, 6-2. Halep's a solid player. Serena's interesting. I will say this about Serena. She's best women's player of all time. But she is in her 30s as well. She's not old in life. But in tennis terms, she is also getting into her mid to late 30s. And we've discussed it before, and she's discussed it, about being a mother and that pregnancy and her physically having to work her way back into shape. But her peak days she's still going to make the finals because she's a great player. And then the women's field just isn't as deep as the men is. But yeah, you just see a scenario where Halep, very defensive player, offensively and defensively, can move a little bit better than Serena can. Serena's still mobile, but not in her peak days. And that's what you saw in that match against Halep. She was unable to really move up and down. And then last point of the show and of the miscellaneous department, I got to find a way to get to Wimbledon because it'd be so interesting to do that. I made a list of, and I might publish it, just life thing. I've listed a lot of sports things that I have not been to over the years. I've been fortunate to go to a lot of things NFL-wise and baseball. I've had a pretty good life with that. But I listed some places I want to go for Atlanta United because I can get coverage there or cover the games. Certain cities like Montreal and Toronto, LA I've not been to for any sporting event, but things like that. But I also listed some tennis matches. Wimbledon's right up there. The pomp and circumstance, a little bougie for me, I'll admit, but it still would be interesting to go to Wimbledon and see the crowd and the atmosphere. You see the Royals there and the different actors. Woody Harrelson had a really fun time at the men's double final. I highly recommend that you look at that. But yeah, Wimbledon is up there. I would prefer to go to the U.S. Open in New York. I'm born and raised in New York and never been to a U.S. Open match. That's definitely going to happen, hopefully in 2020. But Wimbledon would be an intriguing one because it's the most exclusive one. And I think out of all the tournaments, you ask the players, the one they would want to win the most, it's Wimbledon. It's unique in the fact that it's on grass. None of the other majors are on grass. Even the U.S. Open used to be on grass. A fun fact for you to tell everybody. Back in the 60s, I think they converted to hard courts in the 70s. But I don't know what Australia used. Australia probably was grass too. I don't know. French has always been clay. But yeah, so it's the only grass tournament, so that makes it unique. Smaller crowds. It's England, so it has that unique quirk to it. But the Australian Open's the very first tournament. It's kind of an odd part of the year. It's January, February. You're not thinking about tennis. So it comes and goes. The U.S. Open, you would think, hey, it's the United States, it's New York, and it's the largest crowds. because it's New York and the stadiums are the biggest. But so it has that kind of going for it. And the French, it's on clay. French culture is very interesting as well. But clay tennis, I don't think is appreciated as much as hard court or grass even. So Wimbledon, I think, is that one that has the uniqueness of it. And when I say we have Kate Middleton and Pippa Middleton and Meghan Markle, I'm not gonna say the the royal family. They're on at the matches. That adds a interesting element to it as well. But yeah, one day I find a way. Even if I don't go to an actual match itself, it'd be interesting to see the ground and see the size of it because it looks so small. I will say I've been to U.S. Open in New York, not when they're playing, but I've gone to Mets games and seen the tennis courts and all that, so I have a very good view of it. I could never line it up with the summertime and going to tennis matches. But I would just like to see the size of it because it looks so small and quaint and intimate, and I think that brings such a unique element to sport. Obviously, there are a bunch of other ones, World Cups and all that jazz, but yeah, just watching the match was very interesting, and over the past 2 weeks and seeing who won and who was into it. But yeah, that men's match was very, very well played, and as I said, the U.S. Open, I think this may be the last year. I don't know if Federer will do a fair. He's one of those guys where he'll just announce his retirement and go home to his family, and you won't hear from him. So he's not going to be one of those do the grandfather clock tour where he goes to each tournament and gets a gift for retiring and all of that. I don't want to put a retirement on him because I want to see him continue to play. But this might be his last U.S. Open coming up, and we'll get to the U.S. Open when it comes up in a few weeks. As a matter of fact, I think it's about 2-3 weeks from now when that starts up and running. But enjoy while you see these three guys now, because once they're gone, I don't see another guy in the pipeline that's going to be winning all of these majors. These three guys are double-digit majors playing at the same time. You can only imagine if one of them wasn't playing, someone would be in the 30s. I know Federer would be, because he has been but he has been sniped for several majors by Nadal and Djokovic, that if one of those guys wasn't around, he'd have it. So I was very impressed by seeing that match on Sunday, and we'll go from there. So thanks for listening to our show today. Very excited about that. I was going to break down some combat sports, but we're running out of time. Make sure you listen to our verbal submission, which will be taking place, Lord willing, tomorrow. We're going to record that show. We've been trying to catch up on all of the New Japan sports, but we'll get there. We'll do a show for you. But yeah, listen to verbal submission later on this week, and now have a full breakdown of all of our combat sports. But thanks for listening to everything that we're doing, and as always, head to the mothership, sportsinquirer.net. Go on there, see everything that we're doing. Twitter and Instagram, Sports Inquirer, all one word. Facebook, The Sports Inquirer, and Sports Inquirer. We have 2 pages. I tried to resolve it, but because the way that works is that our Instagram is tied to one of them, and then our site's tied to the other one. It's all the same stuff, and we have followers on both, so we're just going to keep both pages. It's no biggie. And then finally, subscribe to YouTube and SoundCloud under The Sports Inquirer. So thank you for listening to the show, and we'll get back at you next time.